Hey everybody, welcome back to my installment series where I walk you through my most recent trip to Scotland. So in the month of July, I had the immense honor to visit Scotland and travel around the Shetland Islands for a 9-night knitting tour. It was absolutely amazing and I'm so excited to share all of the cool things that I got up to with all of you. So before we really get into it, this is part 3. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, I do encourage you to pause this video and head over to watch those different installments. I'll link each up in the right hand corner of this screen. So here's the link for part 1 and here's the link for part 2. If you have already seen those and you don't need to go back and re-watch them, let me just jog your memory to say that we left off ending the day of Saturday, July 6th, and now we are starting the day on Sunday, July 7th. So, started the day as usual with breakfast in the Shetland Hotel. No complaints, it was fabulous. And then I took some time to work on my Miles shirt jacket in the lobby of the hotel. On our visit to the Silly Sheep Fiber Company the day prior, I purchased some tweed covered buttons. They were the perfect match for this Miles shirt jacket that I knit up in preparation for this trip. So I sat in the lobby and affixed them to my garment before getting on the coach and going off for the day's adventure. So the first itinerary item for the day was a Shetland lace workshop with Elizabeth Johnson. Excuse me, I meant to say Elizabeth Johnston. And this workshop was at another community hall. This one was a little bit further away than where we had our Hazel Tyndall workshop, but it was a really cute little spot, a nice vibe. There were twinkle lights at the top, a stage at the front. It was just fun to be there. So anyway, for the workshop, Elizabeth provided us the yarn and the patterns that we would need, and there were 3 different Shetland lace patterns we could choose from, separated by difficulty level. So there was a beginner level, an intermediate level, and an advanced level. And I thought, listen, I've knit lace before. What's the big deal? I'm gonna try and knit the advanced level pattern. And I am here to tell you what in the world was wrong with me. That was the wrong choice to make, because I may have knit lace before, but I haven't knit Shetland lace, and this is a whole different ball game. I thought there would be a break from the lace. You know, you think there's a right side of knitting and a wrong side of knitting, and typically on the wrong side you get a break from the eyelets and the knit 2 togethers and the slip knits. No, not with this, not with the advanced Shetland lace pattern. There was a lace motif to work within the stitches on every single row. There was no respite. There was nowhere to hide from this lace. So I didn't end up finishing the pattern. I cut my swatch a few rows short and bound off before we left. So I got this all encapsulated within the time slot of the workshop. I got as far as I could, but I was certainly excited to get back to my worsted weight stockinette in the round knitting project that I was bringing with me all over where we were going during the tour. After the workshop, we got back on the coach to head into town for lunch, and I'll just quickly show you what the coach looked like. This coach had a bathroom. There was a bathroom. I never used it, but I know that other people did, and I didn't hear any complaints, so I'm assuming that it was just a top-notch experience. But this is the coach. You can see that there's overhead storage. It's pretty roomy. There was room for most of us to have the seat row to ourselves, so it was great. After a quick trip in the coach, we got back to the city center and we followed June to the high street where we had lunch at the number 88 restaurant. I need you to mentally prepare to look at this meal. This was my favorite meal on the entire tour, maybe of my entire life. It was delicious. It was a traditional Sunday roast. We had roast beef, roast chicken, there were Yorkshire puddings, there was gravy, there were roasted vegetables. The cabbage tasted like autumnal perfection. The soup was incredible. I even asked if they would sell me the recipe and they said no, it's a secret, and I shook my fist in the air, metaphorically. I didn't actually do it, but oh my gosh, this meal was absolutely incredible. After my life was forever changed by this Sunday meal, we had a little bit of time, just the teensiest amount of time, to walk around the city center of Lerwick before we got back on the coach to head to our next event. So I was walking around the high street and I was looking left, I was looking right, up the closes on either side of the high street, and I happened past one of the side streets or closes, and I saw in the distance up the hill some fuchsia bushes. But behind the fuchsia bushes, I saw more foliage with pink on it, and I thought, what in the world is that? Like, I know in the foreground those are fuchsia bushes, but I'm not sure what that tall tree with pink foliage is. So I walked up the stairs, up this alleyway, and I could not believe what I was seeing. I had happened upon a fuchsia tree, and what I would later come to realize, really a whole forest of fuchsia trees. Now, if you have not watched my channel before or you're not familiar, basically I love fuchsias. Fuchsias are my all-time favorite flower, favorite plant, and the reason for that is in our family cabin, or on our family cabin property, we have a fuchsia bush, and this cabin was built by my great-grandfather. It's been in our family since it was built in the 1940s, and it's the most special place on earth for me and many members of my family. On the property, there is a fuchsia bush that I've mentioned, and I've asked my grandmother if she knew the history of it, and she said that it was there when my grandfather first took her to see the property and visit his family home in the 1950s. So the fuchsia bush in my family is over 70 years old, and it's so special. It's so special to me. And to see this fuchsia tree and this fuchsia forest on Shetland, comparing this in my mind to the 70-ish year old fuchsia bush we have in our family, I think that these fuchsia trees are hundreds of years old. Like, I guarantee it, at least 300 years old. They've got to be. They're so substantial. They've been pruned over decades and decades, I think over centuries, and I really felt like I was having an out-of-body experience when I got to enjoy these fuchsia trees. They were so amazing, and I'm so happy to show you them and say fuchsia trees exist. If you didn't know it, fuchsia trees exist. I'm changed forever by knowing that, and I hope you are too. All right, we'll continue on for those of you who don't have a heart and don't care about fuchsia bushes. After finishing up in Lerwick, poking around, we got on the coach and headed to Neil Linnell studio. I didn't stay for the talk in Neil Linnell because it was a little cramped and I wanted some fresh air, but we got to see some high-end, high-fashion knitwear items from the Neil Linnell studio, and then also explored the nearby nature area. Got to see a little field of sheep, got to go to the coastline, hear the water lapping up on the shore. It was very picturesque, very soothing. And then we made our way to Jarlshof. If you're a history buff, then you would definitely love visiting Jarlshof. For those of you who don't know, this is a prehistoric site. It contains evidence of over 4,000 years of human settlement on a single site, so it's very impressive. You can walk through the ruins of an Iron Age brock and wheelhouse, and also see physical proof of Norse communities and how they were set up in the Northern Isles in early medieval times. It's just fantastic. And I, of course, took the opportunity to knit while in the Jarlshof area. I love history. I love feeling connected to history. And for me, the best way and most special way to commemorate that is by knitting a little bit. All in all, just had a fabulous time at Jarlshof. Then we got back in the coach to head to the hotel for dinner. Fun fact about Jarlshof is you do have to cross the runway for the Shetland airport in order to get to Jarlshof and then to leave Jarlshof. So we did get to see some planes take off, and then we crossed the runway, which was a little, I don't know, interesting. I've never driven across a runway before. And then once we got back to the hotel, it was dinner time. Again, a 3-course meal that was excellent. I had the Shetland mussels to start, followed by the fillet of haddock, and then finally with a warm berry crumble for dessert. And with that ends Sunday, July 7th. Good morning. It's Monday morning. We have a little bit of more free time this morning than normal days. Normal days, or so far, we've had breakfast and then it's pretty quickly we need to get on the coach and then go to our first stop. But today we're not leaving the hotel till 9:45, and Jamieson and Smith Wool Brokers opens at 9, so there's a little bit of time to shop, and it's just a few minutes walk away from the hotel. So I figured I would time myself and see how long of a walk it actually is. So let's go to the local yarn store. I want you to take a minute and think about the nearest yarn store to where you live, and then think about how long it would take you to walk there from door to door. And if it's under 5 minutes, I'll tell you, wow, that's amazing, you're so lucky. If it's not under 5 minutes, then you may understand my excitement over how quick the walk to Jamieson and Smith Wool Broker is from my hotel room at the Shetland Hotel. Also, this may provide some insight into the mix-up that happened our first day on Shetland when we were dropped off in the city center first for Jamieson's of Shetland and then brought to Jamieson and Smith Wool Broker. So even though it was a long walk from the city center that first day, it was only a few minutes to get to the hotel after I got some shopping in. So from door to door, from my hotel room to Jamieson and Smith Wool Broker, you're not going to believe this, it was under 4 minutes. Time was of the essence on this visit because we did have to get back to the hotel in time to get on the coach for our day of excursions. So I picked a pattern that I wanted to get a kit for, and I asked for a purple centered kit, had a successful shopping experience, and then made my way back to the hotel for breakfast. Here's my breakfast. It was excellent as always. I really enjoyed the Scottish porridge. And then also I'll show you what the purple kit looked like. Later, after more pondering, I decided that this wasn't really the purple I wanted. It was a bit more gray, dusty, and not vibrant purple. So I did end up going back the next morning and swapping this kit out for different color options. Once my visit to Jamieson and Smith Wool Brokers was all settled, I headed down to the coach, and then we had a quick trip up the road to the Shetland Textile Museum. This was really such a quick trip. It was not that far away at all. The Shetland Textile Museum is an amazing place. It's in an old fish house or fish market, I believe is what they told us, and it's just a testament to the talent and the skill that goes into all of the things that we see on the Shetland Islands in terms of fiber and knitwear and spinning and yarn and all of those things. Basically, you could walk around this small building and see so many examples of Fair Isle knitting, of Shetland lace, and actually this visit is really what gave me the confidence and the confirmation that I did need to go back and get different colors for the kit I had just purchased that morning. I really should have waited, to be honest with you, after seeing more examples of Fair Isle knitting. If you've watched earlier installments, you know that I am very upfront about the fact that choosing colors that go well together definitely feels outside of my wheelhouse. So I was taking pictures of different examples of Fair Isle knitting that had colors that I really liked, and I liked how they worked together. And then I was able to use those photos to inform my yarn purchasing decisions later on in the trip. My one regret on this trip happened here at the Shetland Textile Museum. When we got back on the coach, one of my new friends showed us her purchase from the gift shop at the museum, and it was a hand knit headband that Hazel Tyndall had knit. It had her label on it with her name, and it was only like 20 pounds if I remember correctly, and I should have just gotten off the coach right then. We had time. I should have booked it back to the museum and grabbed a Hazel Tyndall original. I am still kicking myself for not doing that. We got back on the coach. I clocked a Superdrug to check for the Dusty Rose lipstick later, and I also got to try an iron brew. This is Scotland's #1 selling fountain drink, soda, pop, whatever you call it. It's very sweet, it tastes like bubblegum, and I'm very glad that I tried it. Then we had lunch at the Shetland Museum and Archive in the little cafe catered by the Dowry. I had the smoked haddock chowder along with, I think I ordered the ham and Swiss cheese sandwich, but the cheese that I had was not Swiss, but it was a delicious sandwich nonetheless. And if you look around this cafe and the museum itself, there are so many nods to the wonderful work of yarn and fiber and knitting that goes into the history of Shetland and the current landscape of Shetland. There's just fiber everywhere. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. After lunch, it was back on the coach to make our way to that same community hall where we had our workshop with Hazel Tyndall a few days prior, to have a workshop I was so excited for before coming on this trip, which was a Scottish knitting belt or Shetland knitting belt workshop. If you've never heard of a knitting belt, basically it's a leather sheath that's stuffed with horsehair. We collectively decided it must be Shetland pony hair, of course, and there are several holes on the front of the leather sheath. That is where you put one end of a very long double pointed knitting needle, anywhere from 30 centimeters to 40 centimeters, and you use this for your knitting. Basically, it's an ergonomic way to knit and to support your body while you're doing this craft and make it so you can do it in a portable and accessible way. This is our knitting instructor, Jeanette Budge, and this is quite slowed down, but if you look closely, you can see that one of her knitting needles is sticking out from the knitting belt, and that is a stationary needle. What she's doing is she's using her other double-pointed knitting needles that are moving, and the stitches are moving, but the stationary needle is stuck in the knitting belt, so essentially you're knitting around that needle instead of moving both of your hands and both needles in work at the same time. I quite enjoyed this workshop, and I did see a difference in my tension when I was using the knitting belt, so I'm excited to continue to practice this. We did get to take our knitting belts home with us, and I have a hat pattern that I'm going to make for my husband on my knitting needles that I got with my making belt, and I'm just excited to add this skill to my toolbox. You're never gonna guess what happened next. Okay, fine, it was dinner. I had the watermelon and brie bites for my starter, incredible, amazing, and then I had venison sausage for my main, also incredible, and then finally I had a sorbet trio. I think I took a bite out of this before I took a picture. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, it's the last night on Shetland Island. Tomorrow we will be checking out and then boarding the ferry in the evening, but basically by tomorrow morning we need to be packed and checked out and have all of our clothes and baggage and stuff on the coach. So I'm packing up, and I have to say, bringing this fold-up duffel bag, absolute must, even if it's not because of needing the extra space, but having like a soft bag to carry, it's a must. Highly recommend. So let me get packed up. I think that's gonna go ahead and do it for part 3 of this installment series recapping the Scotland trip. So thank you so much for watching. If you've made it through all 3 parts, I really appreciate you. Stay tuned for part 4. There's some exciting things around the corner. I'll tell you all about the Shetland Museum Archive Textile Tour and the free time we spent in the Lerwick before we get back on the Northlink ferry to head back to Aberdeen and then eventually onward to Edinburgh. So exciting things ahead. Thanks again for watching. Make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on future recaps and also podcast episodes, Ravelry user tips, and all the other fun videos that I upload on my channel. So thank you again so much for your support, and I'll see you back here for part 4.